All right, folks, we're back again. Today we are working on cell structure and organization. You can see down here, this is what you should be looking at. You could see, first of all, that it says full proper slides on Google Classroom. So what I mean here is that this package is actually missing a few slides. Now, why? Because your assignment is to add a few notes in areas where I tell you. So you'll have to take notes and add them to different parts of your slides. So you're actually actively going through these slides a little bit. So some of the slides are missing. But wait, Mr. Siddick, where will I possibly get the extra info? Am I just going to listen to you talk? No. Well, first of all, it'll be up here when I'm talking, and you can pause the video. But probably more easy is if you watch the video and look along with the full set of slides right here. So in the lesson, I have posted that you can check this out. You can check out the cell review slides, and this has every slide in it. Oh, sorry. I'm offline right now. But you have the entire PowerPoint slide there. Also, it'll be up here today as I present it. I'll go to the beginning. There we are. So there's going to be a lot in common here with what you're doing. Sorry, just checking it out. Now, one thing I want you to know is that this might be a two-part video because there's a lot of essential information that you're going to be using for the rest of the unit. So I might actually have two videos here today. So there might be lesson 2 part 1, lesson 2 part 2. Just so you know. Another thing to know is that your assignment 2, will be putting the notes in the booklet that I gave you, adding those notes, and then sending me pictures of those notes and submitting them as the second assignment. And I'll give you some time to do this. My goal is to post 2 to 3 lessons a week, and some of them will be longer and some of them will be shorter. I might also post some fun lessons, just goofing around or doing some different things, maybe playing with microscopes or going over things we've learned before. I'm not sure. We're going to have to play it by ear and see how things go. So let's go to the first slide. You can see here, cell structure and organization. Animal cell, plant cell. There's a lot in common with these things. There's a lot in common with an animal cell and a plant cell, except there is 3 major differences. You are going to learn those 3 differences, and you will need to know them. They are guaranteed to be on a test. The 3 major differences between a plant cell and an animal cell. But for the most part, a lot of the same parts that look very similar. The big differences are on the outside, this large body here, and these little chloroplasts right there. That's the big difference. The wall, the vacuole, and the chloroplast. And we'll get into that, so don't be panicking just yet. So, full proper slides are on Classroom. Cell structure and organization, there's your first one. So, let's look. What is a cell? A cell is a building block of life. It is the simplest form of life, the simplest unit of life, and chemical reactions occur in the cell that keep us alive. There's a lot to think about there, but overall you got to know that cells are the basic building blocks of life. Because a one-celled organism is still a living organism. Don't forget that. It might seem super simple, but a one-celled organism, like this little guy down here, is still a living thing. Even though we are multicellular organisms with billions of cells, we are a living thing just as a one-cell organism is. Also, this is kind of cool. Not something you're going to need to know for grade 9, but inside of every cell, there are chemical reactions. You might have heard about the mitochondria being the powerhouse of the cell and things like that. What that means is in every cell in your body, in every living cell, there are small chemical reactions taking place to keep this cell alive. Oxygen and a sugar from some form of digestion or photosynthesis will normally combine in something called cellular respiration. You don't need to know about that right now, but it's cool to know that that's happening. You will learn about that someday, so pretty cool that chemical reactions are happening in even individual cells. Now we'll move on. This slide coming up, that's not in your notes, all right? So let's look at the handout. You're going to flip over from what is a cell. You flip the page, and you see cell structure in plant and animals. So stop there, and on your paper, write down the types of cells. So you could pause the video right away, and you've got to write eukaryotes and prokaryotes. You're going to write this down. If you don't want to pause the video, you can go to the Google slide right now. The slideshow, I think it's actually a PowerPoint. I might transfer that if I can. Still working out the kinks here. Or you could pause it and look at this. But what you've got to know, a eukaryote is cells contain membrane-bound organelles. Organelles is a word you got to get used to. Organelles means little mini organs like the mitochondria, the cytoplasm, the ribosomes. All those little things inside a cell, those are called organelles. So you're going to hear that word a lot. That just means little parts inside a cell. So eukaryotic cells contain membrane-bound organelles, including a nucleus, mitochondria, Golgi body, etc. They can be single-celled or multi-cell, such as you, me, plants, fungi, and insects. So you got to write that down right here on the top of your paper. Write that down, eukaryotic cells, and then you're going to write prokaryotic cells. You'll write that there as well. Prokaryotic cells do not contain a true nucleus or any other membrane-bound organelle. Bacteria are an example. They're going to be much less complicated. Very simple organisms. They're going to be much more blob-like in their appearance. There's no defined parts to them. But there's an infinite amount of these on Earth, right? Bacteria, come on. Bacteria are actually pretty sophisticated and advanced because there's so many of them, they're always mutating and adapting. So you need to know the difference between a eukaryote, which we'll be spending most of our time with, and then you need to know what a prokaryote is. And there will be some times when we talk about prokaryotes later when we talk about how they divide and multiply and procreate. So you have to add that in here. Now, I'm going to go to the next slide. And I want you to write this down too. This isn't in your slideshow. So you need to go here and write on the side of your paper examples of cells. And you would write amoeba. I'm terrible at this, so I'm going to let you write plant stem, bacteria, red blood cell, nerve cell. Once again, you could pause it right now if you'd like, or you could go to the slides. So if you want to pause now and write. Okay, so these are just examples. Now we're going to talk about something in a few slides from now called cell differentiation. Differ means different, right? Differentiation, cell differences. These are all cells. They all have the same parts, but they're all very different. A nerve cell has got these tails, these dendrites. Blood cells are disc-shaped so they can flow easily and carry the most amount of oxygen. Bacteria are very adaptable. A plant stem is rigid because it's supporting a plant. Amoeba, well, it's just a squiggly little guy. But what you got to know is that cell differentiation means that, yes, although everything's a cell with the same parts, different jobs require different types of cells. So we're going to learn about why a red blood cell would be like this, why a nerve cell would be like that. Why do cells that all have the same thing end up looking very different? That's because of cell differentiation. That's coming up in a slide or two. So these are examples of some cells. But I want you to be thinking, every one of these cells looks like they're kind of designed to do their specific job. Kind of cool. All right, now back to the slides. You have this next slide. Cell structures in plants and animals. This right here, this is what it's all about, folks. You got to know these. You don't have to write notes on this right now because you're going to have slides on them. But this is the core of our lesson today. You need to know what a nucleus is, what it looks like, what its job is. Cytoplasm, where it is, what it looks like, what its job is. For every one of these things. So let's write that on the paper right now. You got to know where, what it looks like, and you need to know its job. You got to know that stuff, all right? So, we're going to talk about a nucleus, cytoplasm, cell membrane, cell wall. That's a special one. That's only in plants. So let's put a star beside that. That's plant only. Cell vacuole. We can put a star beside that. Although there are vacuoles in animals, plant vacuoles are giant. We'll talk about that later. Ribosomes, mitochondria, chloroplast. Let's put a star beside that. Let's put 2 stars beside vacuole because it's extra special because that is plant and animal. But it's very different. In a plant, it's giant. In an animal, it's very small. Cell wall is plant only, and chloroplast is plant only. Now, you have the next slide. It's not the best picture, but you can look up here. You've got animal and plant cells. Very similar, but some differences. Remember at the beginning, and just on the slide that we just did, I said vacuole, chloroplast, wall. The vacuole in a plant cell, let's see if we can find a vacuole here. They have little small vacuoles. I can't see one right now, but they could, but they'd be very small organelles, whereas in a plant, look at this. Don't ever think that's the nucleus. Nope, the nucleus always looks much more complicated. So, very similar, but a couple things different. And these green little things here, those chloroplasts, those are not going to be in a animal cell. If you want to look at the paper here for a second, if you see in an animal cell, if you see a diagram of an animal cell, and you see something inside of it, because that looks kind of like little pancake stacks of pancakes, kind of long, that's probably a chloroplast on a diagram. It's like little stacks of pancakes. Because on a test, you're not going to have color diagrams, right? So you got to be able to identify it by the shape as well. So heads up, chloroplasts are pancakes. You could even go back on your paper here and you could write P pancakes. Just so you remember. Doesn't hurt. Okay, so now we're going to flip over. I'm going to plug my camera in there. All right. Now we are on the cell membrane. Cell membrane is in a plant and an animal cell. Animal cell diagram. All right. So, the cell membrane. It allows some things in and it allows some things out. It is the gatekeeper of the cell. Okay? So I would write on the side, gatekeeper. I'd write that on there. Partially permeable. That means that some things can get in. It lets the good things in. It keeps the bad things out. And it does it through this very complicated layer of fat that is around every cell. That is something you will learn about in upper level bio and in first year bio and university kinds of things. It's actually called a phospholipid bilayer. It's fats and phosphates that are allowing things, depending on whether they're hydrophilic or hydrophobic, to enter the cell. That's way more information than you're going to need. It's more information than I need. But some things can get out. Now, let's go to the next slide. We're talking about the nucleus. The nucleus, I would write beside it, the brain or control center. Right? So the nucleus is surrounded by a membrane, and it could be called the nuclear membrane, but you might see it called a nuclear envelope. So be ready for that. Contains one or more nucleolus. The nucleolus is the eye of the cell. It's right here if you look. Actually, let's go here. That's the nucleolus. Right here, sorry. Contains chromatin and chromosomes. It has all of the genetic information. So, I would write on the side, genetic info. And this is key right here. Essential for cell division. We're going to talk about two things later. We're going to talk about mitosis and meiosis. Those are two ways that one cell splits up to become 2 or even 4. But all of that division happens inside the nucleus. So that's why the nucleus is very important. The nucleus, when we talk about mitosis and meiosis in a few days, is going to be where all of the action is happening. All right, we can flip the page now. All right, the one everybody knows, mitochondria. But first, we are missing 2 slides. We are missing a slide on cytoplasm and the organelles in the cytoplasm. So you're going to have to go and add notes here and some notes here, right? And I'll show them to you up on the next slide right here. Cytoplasm, so you need to get some idea of what this is about. You need to write these 2 points right here, so you could write them there. And please look for a second, because what you need to know is that the cytoplasm is basically the slime. It's everything else. You could even write slime beside it, right? If there's a part here and a part there floating around, it's not in this one, right? But you see all these parts floating around. Well, all that stuff that's not a part, all this goop, that liquid, that gel, that's cytoplasm. It's like the water that everything lives in. It's the gel or the slime, right? So we could say it's between the surface and the nucleus. It contains enzymes and it contains all the organelles. So yes, the cytoplasm is where the mitochondria is. It's where the Golgi bodies are. All the things float around in the cytoplasm. It's the slime. So pause this if you want and get that down, and I'm going to move on. The next slide you need to take some notes is this. So you got to write right here. Organelles in the cytoplasm. So you're going to have to write 4 actually, right? You're going to put mitochondria, you're going to put the ribosomes, you're going to put chloroplasts and only in plant, and you're going to put cell vacuoles, right? So you're going to write that down on your paper. This is part of your assignment, folks, so get it done. Pause this if you want, or go to the slide and find it as well. All right, now we're back to the mitochondria, and you have this one in your booklet, so you're good. So what do you need to know? Always write energy on the margin and powerhouse. Make sure you have those, right? So aerobic respiration occurs. That's chemical reactions like we were talking about at the beginning of today's lesson. And energy used to perform cell activities such as growth and reproduction. So it's all about energy for the mitochondria. And the mitochondria normally looks like a pill with some squiggles in it. Something like that in a diagram. We're going to pause here. I'm going to take a break, and then we're going to do another video, lesson 2, part 2, and we'll continue there.